Thank you. So, Clemson, 81 degrees. High today, 84. Bend, 36 degrees. High today, 63. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Paula and Jorge, as always. And thank you, Bob, for leading the announcements. And Linda, especially to you. And particularly our new members, thank you, both here and not here, but they're here in spirit. And I got to say, this guy who looked kind of dressed up walked into the room halfway through, and I thought to myself, who the heck was this guy? And then I realized it was Tom. And I didn't recognize you, Tom. But it's good to have you here, and I hope everything's okay with your father and that you're hanging in there. But you look good today. So thanks for dressing up for us. All right. I want to take up where Pat just left off. Included in her closing words were, even though sometimes we'll fail as time goes on, we will fail less often. Even though we'll sometimes fail, as time goes on, we'll fail less often. I want to turn it around because we need both sides. We will sometimes succeed. As time goes on by, we will succeed more often. We will sometimes succeed, and as time goes by, we will succeed more often. Because we will succeed because compassion is built into us. Here are some examples if you really look carefully. I was driving back to Clemson on Route 123 the other day, and on the other side of the highway was someone stopped with a flat tire. 3 cars had stopped to help an elderly man who was in that car. A 4th car stopped as I drove by, and I was thinking, not bad, 4 people stopping to help someone who was in trouble. Does it matter who was driving? No. They stopped. They cared. Yesterday, as Pat was mentioning, Dick Danforth and Pat and Kathy Crane and I went to a conflict resolution process workshop in Columbia, South Carolina, and put on by the Mennonite Peace Center. And this woman, the woman was a presenter. She was from Chicago, and she'd started the presentation. And this guy comes walking up, and you remember this, Pat. He comes walking up to the front, and you're a presenter. You don't think anybody's they're going to sit down and pay attention. This guy's walking up, and she says, "Can I help you, sir?" And he said, "Well, I have some water for you," because she didn't have any water up there. It's compassion. The Charter for Compassion is a brilliantly crafted document, but it also could be just a bunch of feel-good words. The key to that charter is reflected in what we do, we see, and we hear. People stop to help on the road. Compassion. A person getting the presenter a cup of water. Compassion. The people who stopped to see if everything was okay with me last night when I was on a road taking photographs of the moon and checking to make sure I was okay as I was taking photographs. Compassion. Compassion goes on and on and on and on. The list is endless, and you're on it. And I think you know it. As time goes by, we will succeed more often. Compassion succeeds more often than not. In fact, I've seen it here over the last 2 years in many forms. I would say it is the blood that goes through the spiritual body of this fellowship. It is pumped, that blood of compassion, by the heart that you renew every Sunday, every day of the week, in your thoughts, words, and deeds. And what we try to do every Sunday at our best, or in covenant groups, or other ways, is try to reinfuse and re-support and re-gift and renew our hearts. And what our hearts pump is compassion. But that's not the end of the work. You don't have a copy of the charter as one of your official documents. You haven't yet signed on as a congregation to be official partners worldwide of the Charter for Compassion. And interestingly enough, I don't think there are any Unitarian Universalist congregations in partnership yet. Be interesting if you were the first. What we're doing right now, though, is, as Pat mentioned, finding a way for those words in the Charter for Compassion to be manifested here, to be expressed in this place, in your words, and in your living history. As Pat said, the relational covenant work is to create a document based upon our unison affirmation. It is not now, and it will never be a perfect document. I know that's shocking. It continues to be streamlined. It will require everyone who is actively involved in this congregation right now to have a part in shaping it. And it evolves. And I'll give you an example. Until last Thursday night, we had a ever so slightly cumbersome-looking document that started with a mission statement that had been passed here in December 2007, and then a relational covenant, followed then by a conflict resolution process, because you need that, and then a final statement of how to create a conflict resolution team. It was a fairly long document. The newest covenant group that Carol had started, and I went to visit, I asked them, as I've done with other groups, to give me their input. And the covenant group is partly new friends and members, and a few veteran folks, and some people here. They suggested some really good changes in wording, as you might expect Unitarian Universalists to do, and it was great. But then they asked a very special question. They said that the 4 parts were too unwieldy together, and they were confusing, especially to newer people. They said, couldn't the mission and relational covenant be one document, which would be considered by the fellowship this month, and then the conflict resolution document and so on could be policy passed by the board? People would know about it, and if a conflict or disagreement arose, they could turn to it. But the new and veteran people alike said, wouldn't it be nice to have the mission statement and the relational covenant standing on their own? I thought, what a great idea. I never would have thought of that. So I talked to the folks who've been helping put it together, and they said, absolutely, it's a great idea, at least the people that I've talked to so far. So now it has changed its shape, thanks to the folks on Thursday. It will now be 2 documents. It makes more sense that way. It still speaks to the words and actions that invite us to be compassionate and caring toward ourselves and others. New folks, veteran folks, members and friends, all of whom are currently involved in this congregation, have a part in shaping it, and that will continue. Yes, the relational covenant will continue to change. Words will appear and move around and disappear over the years. But its central message, like the charter, will be that compassion is not weakness. It means setting healthy boundaries and ensuring that people are treated fairly and that everybody knows the rules. Compassion is not being a doormat. It is part of our spiritual DNA as a species for a reason. That spiritual DNA is what the Charter for Compassion is speaking about. And secondarily, in our own words, what that relational covenant talks about as well. It is how to translate compassion into action. So the relational covenant is the first step. You're probably you're probably not going to succeed all the time. But you're going to get better at it, because I've seen it. and I know you're capable of it, and so do you. You're going to carry the truth of compassion with a large C in your hearts at all times, because you're going to renew it every time two or more of you are in the same place. More than that, you're going to share it with others to inspire and to renew their sense of hope and aspiration in a world gone crazy. You will be doing what Karen Armstrong said in her wish today, to rebuild a sane relationship between religions that have gone crazy because they are afraid. What you are doing is building the world to come. And that world to come is a charter for compassion that leaves no one out. That truth that you will carry with you is your Unitarian vision of oneness. It is also your universalist story of universal salvation. So I'm going to end with this, asking you these questions. Who but you can do this task for this area? Not just Clemson, not just Clemson University, not just the city of Clemson, but say a 15 or 20 mile radius around this spot. Who but you can do this task? Because you're the leaders. You're it. You don't obey just one religious tradition and say this is it and all the others are wrong. You say that there's truth and wisdom in all the sources and all the traditions, secular and religious. And our work is to bring them all together and have that bloodstream, that life of compassion take root and grow. So please, lead the way to a compassionate world starting here and now and always. You cannot fail. You can and you will succeed more and more because it is your calling. It is like the Relay for Life that people ran and worked on and gave to. This is exactly what you do here. Except you're doing it every step, every voice, every experience you do with every other person you encounter on this world. You are it. You cannot fail. Because what you show and what you share with the world is the charter, is your relationships, is your covenant, is your gift. And the best part of all is you don't leave anyone out. And what a gift that is. Thank you. And thank you again to Pat. Let's sing.